Welcome to the Heartbeat for Hire podcast. I'm your host, Lyndsay Dowd. My goal is to help train leaders and sales organizations how to manage and deliver results with empathy, compassion, and kindness. Let's get started. Welcome to this episode of Heartbeat for Hire. I am so excited to bring you our guest today. Morgan Ingram is a sales rep who happens to be a sales coach that coaches sales teams how to use modern sales techniques that bolster pipeline, leverage social media, schedule net new accounts, and cold call with confidence. He's the host of the podcast and YouTube channel called the SDR Chronicles, with more than 100 videos providing SDRs and sales reps with motivation, advice, and tactics for their sales journey. His work has been featured in Forbes, Sales Hacker, the HubSpot blog, and the Harvard Business Review. Morgan has trained top companies at Snowflake, Zoom, Salesforce to help them evolve their prospecting game and schedule meetings. And not to cap it off with something great, he was named top sales voice by LinkedIn in 2018, 2019, 2020, and 2022. Morgan, welcome.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
I'm thrilled to have you. You and I spoke a couple of weeks ago, and we talked a little bit about your story, and I loved your background. So would you do us the kindness and just share your story?
Yeah. So I originally wanted to be a sports agent. I don't know if anyone out there originally wanted to be that. I saw Jerry Maguire, show me the money. Right? So I was like, okay, that's going to be me. Right. So I went to the University of Georgia and got a sports management finance double major. And also I had a minor in music business. So I was very serious, to do this. I went to a lot of sports events. I talked to a good amount of sports agents because I genuinely thought it was going to be for me. I realized as I got to senior year that it was not for me. I talked to more people and realized it wasn't the path. And even going into sports sales is something I considered, but it's probably changed. I mean, it actually is pretty much the same now, but it was like 25 grand base. And I just was like, okay, there's gotta be something better.
Something better.
Right. So I remember I did a lot of things in college. I even started a company hosting video game tournaments. So I was very active. And after I graduated college, though, I didn't really know what the next step was because I didn't want to go into finance. I didn't want to go be a sports agent, and I didn't want to go in the sports field. So I actually started getting into public speaking, and I had just a skill in public speaking. I learned how to do it, and I went to high schools and colleges and just did motivational speaking. So I did that for about 5-6 months out of college. And then I realized, though, I went to an event and someone was like, hey, you need to have something that you could talk about with credibility so you could eventually just get paid more to do this. So I was like, what should I do? And they were like, you should go into sales. So I got introduced to a company called Terminus, and I found the VP of sales number and I cold called her. And I was like, hey, the pitch was terrible. It was like, hey, I'm Morgan. I just graduated college. I want to learn tech and marketing. It was really bad, but I at least made the initiative and tried to make something out of it. Right. And she was like, all right, cool. You called, and they brought me in, and I got interviewed for an SDR role, got offered the job on the spot after the second interview. And that's where I started my career. So I was terrible at the beginning. First 3 months were awful. It was really bad. I didn't hit a quota. I was really struggling. And then something just flipped. I just decided to just be more committed to it. Got better at cold calling, emailing, time management, really started to get myself diligent on what I needed to do, started seeing success. And then from there, I decided to document my journey as an SDR. And I started, just like you mentioned, the SDR Chronicles. I did that for 6 to 7 months. I posted every single day I posted almost every single day, not every day, but almost every single day on the YouTube channel. I was posting every single day on LinkedIn. That's how I grew my brand on LinkedIn. I grew the YouTube channel. At the time, there was no one posted on LinkedIn. So I really, was able to captivate that audience. And then also as well, what ended up happening is I got approached by John Barrows. And John Barrows, for context, he still does training today. He's trained Salesforce, Google, Slack, all the big tech companies you probably have heard of. He's trained them. And so I got offered a position to go there, and I was the full-time trainer. So I ended up doing top of the funnel training for 3 to 3.5 years. I trained Snowflake, Zoom, Google, some of the ones that I've trained and trained them on how to prospect and get more meetings. And so from there, I learned a lot, learned how to travel, I saw the world, and it was a really fascinating experience. And now I'm off on my own, doing my own thing. And so that's my story, and that's how I got here today.
There's so much I love about this story, and part of it, the part that I just was working on a post today about how skills are learned and leadership skills are learned, but in this case, sales skills are learned. You can be terrible, but you can have an evolution. And you talk so much about cold calling and the importance of that, and it's like a muscle. Will you just share your perspective on why that is and what's worked for you?
I would say it ultimately, I don't know, I told myself I don't really have a choice. I guess it's like hard to it's like, I was like, what does that mean? I just say like, hey, like this is what I need to do, and in order for me to move forward or be resilient and do these things, I don't really have a choice. I need to learn these skills if I want to go where I need to go. And I think ultimately at the end of the day, like, you know, people have shown that there are capabilities of doing X thing. It's like, why can I not do the same thing? Right. So I think I tell myself that a lot, and that's what keeps me going.
I think it's great. And I think you offer a lot of tips on LinkedIn. So I want to talk about LinkedIn a little bit. You obviously are a consistent poster, and I am too. So I've certainly seen how your personal brand grows. I'd love your perspective on personal branding for people in a corporate setting, because this isn't something that's taught. And what are your feelings? Is that something that's important?
It's incredibly important because of what's happening right now. I mean, you see all these layoffs, people getting let go without any notice. And if you don't have a brand, you're done. So a lot of people are like, wait, like, why should I build one? I'm like, you need to build one before you even think that you need one. Because at any point, if you do get laid off, at least people know who you are. It's easier to get the job. It's a lot harder to get the job when no one knows who you are. Even if you have a good, let's say, brand within your industry, having a good external brand is also helpful as well. Because if you're stacked up against someone that has a brand versus not a brand, you might lose on that opportunity. So I would just consider ways on how to build that brand. And the thing is, it doesn't even need to be that deep. Like, it literally could just be commenting on people's posts, just being engaging, reaching out to people and networking. Like, you could do that and still building your brand, but to just do your job and that's all you do, it's typically going to be a losing scenario for the most part. And again, the environment is showing that. That's not me just saying that. The environment is showing that. So I would make it a commitment to somehow weekly build your brand. You don't need to post every single day, but you do need to think about what you need to do.
Yeah, I work with a bunch of clients that I'm coaching, and what I tell them is it's a wonderful way to hone your voice. And just like you said, you need that career security. There's no such thing as job security. So you need to be able to be recognized as having some kind of perspective and some kind of passion for what you do. I have a friend who's in consulting, and he was like, I can't have a voice. I'm in consulting. That's frowned upon. And I go, actually, that's totally wrong. And you can have a voice that's not offensive or not going to get you in trouble. You can certainly have opinions about the subject matter that you are strong with. But yeah, he definitely struggled with that. And I was like, no, that's not the case anymore.
No,
I love that you said that. So talk to me about being a top LinkedIn voice. How does that happen?
That's a question for LinkedIn. I don't know exactly what the breakdown and the thing is. When I first won it, it was in 2018. It was 2018. So yeah, I mean, look, it was just being consistent. I mean, that advice is typically terrible, but it really comes down to like being consistent. But I actually can point to why it is each time. Like, there was something that I was doing that was very theme based. So in like 2018, I was doing a lot of content around Tactical Tuesdays, what I called it. So I was doing a lot of like breakdowns on how to do Sales Navigator. So I think that led to a reason. 2019, I was doing a lot more like a little bit of personal posts, but I was doing a lot of things like on Friday, like Fun Fact Friday. So like I kind of wrote that. And so I think that caught steam. 2020, I did Muffins with Morgan. So I think a lot of it had to do with just like I had themes around something and I remained consistent. And that was the piece. But I also do show up every single day. Like, you just don't know who you're impacting or who in the world even knows who you are. Like, I still get shocked sometimes that some people know who I am, and I'm not even like connected with them.
Yeah.
Like, they've never liked or commented on anything. So it's just interesting. But again, if you continuously show up every single day, over time, people are going to know who you are, right?
Morgan,
they're going to be like, all right, like this, we've seen this person before, we've interacted in some way. So I think top voice just comes down to, I just continuously focus on how can I give the most to the audience. I don't really try to take away as much for the audience. I just try to give as much as I can.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I do know I have a lot of lurkers, and a lot of the lurkers, because I talk about culture and I talk about leadership so much, the people that are suffering under poor culture, tend not to like or support the post, but I find out that they're texting them to other people. So I know that it's happening. I just can't always see it readily. So speaking of culture, you've got to work with some really great companies. You've got to work with some really great leaders. What are some of the best and worst things you've seen in your history?
Yeah, let's talk about the worst, right? Let's just start there. Let's
sure.
go from there. Number one is managers who don't understand the role or are too focused on how they were successful. So let me explain. So a lot of managers that I would talk to, they were like, wait, I don't understand why the reps aren't doing it my way. And I was like, okay, let's break that down. Like, how do you expect them to do it your way? They're not you. And they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And I'm like, yeah, like that doesn't make any sense on why you think someone should do it your way. Like the fact that they may not come in at 6 a.m. in the morning and stay till 6, you can't expect that from every single rep. That's what you did, right? So you have to meet the reps where they're at. And a lot of people don't do that. They just really focus on, well, if the rep's not like me, then they don't get it. They're not gonna be successful. Well, that's the wrong way to look at it. Like other people can be successful working 2 hours a day versus you working 12, right? So you just got to figure out like what are the strengths of that person? How do they fit within the organization? How can you help them along the way? Like these are pieces and core things that you have to focus on. Overall, though, you can't just be like, oh, this is what you should do because like I did it. Recipe for complete and utter disaster, right? Just across the board, right?
Hear that, everybody? This is what I talk about all the time. Out of Morgan's mouth. Beautiful. Keep going.
But it's an ego thing for sure. And like, I'm not saying that like, and again, I'm not saying this like, oh, I don't have ego. Like we all have ego to a degree. Like I have it in certain stages. However, that's the reason why you're most likely your team is failing. Like your managers probably have some ego there. 2 is laziness, a culture of laziness. So I was having a conversation with someone the other day and we were talking about why don't sales teams do this? Why don't AEs prospect? And I said, it all has to do with incentives. Incentives drive behavior. So I trained a lot of teams and they would say, oh, we want our account executives to be in the prospecting session. I would always ask them this. And I was like, is prospecting mandatory or is it something you recommend to the reps? Oh, we recommend it, but they should do it. So I was like, as a rep, why the heck would I do something that's recommended if I'm doing well? Why would I do that? I don't care, right? So I was like, maybe you should change that to mandatory. And they're like, oh, that's a smart idea. And I was like, yeah, well, like it's like it doesn't make any sense. It's like why do we have laws? What if it was like, it's recommended that you go 45.
You don't shoot anybody.
Yeah, just like if you like beat up a couple people in the street, it's cool, right? Well, that makes no sense. Like we have laws for a reason. You need to set mandatory statutes for a reason, right? And so it goes back to what I've seen as bad as like just know the wrong incentives, the wrong behaviors, and it leads to toxic culture. Top sales reps can do whatever they want. Awful, right? And then also as well, what I've seen is just really poor enablement across the board. So managers don't have good enablement. The enablers don't know what they're doing, right? The executives are not enabling their managers to be better, right? So overall, like you just have poor enablement, right? Across the board. So those are the 3 poor things, right? Anything you want to add to that before we go to the good
Oh my
things?
God. I mean, yeah, the one thing I'll add is the comment you made about why aren't people doing it just like me? I mean, so often I see the biggest mistake of when you promote someone into management is because they were the top rep. They might not care or give a rat's ass about anybody besides themselves. And if you're putting them into a management position, that's a recipe for disaster. So asking the question of why do you want to get into management? Do you take joy in other people's success? Because if you do, then you're going to be successful. If you don't care, you shouldn't go into management. And I know plenty of individual contributors that make huge money being an individual contributor, staying an individual contributor, never going into management. So making that distinction of why is a question that I think a lot of leaders fail to ask. And you set yourself up for failure there.
Absolutely. Every single time.
Yeah.
So
talk about the best.
Some of the best, or maybe not. It's just the bad. No, I'm just kidding. So
no, we have to give examples.
Let's talk about the best. We are going to give the good. We're going to get it. I'm only joking. So number one, and this is going to surprise a lot of people, but it might not. An overarching, over-encumbering data story. So what I mean by that. So like when you ask this, you probably do this as well. When you ask a sales leader, hey, what are your conversion rates? I don't know. What? Like that's like, wait, hold on. How do you not know your conversion rates? This is something that you should live and die by. How do you not know what the conversion rates are? How do you not know what your deal 1 to deal 2 is? Like, that just doesn't make any sense to me. So I'm saying that's a bad thing, right? But the good thing is when the leader's like, hey, my conversion rate with cold calls, I think it's like a 20%. Our emails are at 30, right? Our LinkedIn usage rate is 13%. Like, you should know these numbers by heart. And the fact that most leaders don't know that is thoroughly shocking. And I had a really good leader when I was a sales manager, and he was like, you need to know every single conversion across your team. So like, I had it in a notebook. So when the CRO would be like, yo, like what? I'll be like, hey, yeah, we got it. This. He was like, whoa. Like, I was like, yeah, like you got to be prepared at all times. And that was probably one of the best advice that I got from him was like, know your numbers at all time.
That is not a common thing that people talk about, Morgan. I think it's a really undervalued skill set. And I think it's something that is so important for people to understand. I mean, if you don't understand your conversion rates, converting leads to clients, you have no idea how you're doing. I mean, yes, you could close deals, but what if that's like 1 out of 100 emails or, like, right. It's important to know how your marketing's doing. It's important to know how your sales efforts are tracking. So yeah, I agree with you. That's great.
Yeah. You have to absolutely know what those are. So, and there's a lot of data tools out there that can do that. There's a lot of cleaning tools that can do that. That you could go tap into, but you need to know your data story, right? Those organizations that did well. 2 is like, there was probably 3 to 5 organizations I worked with, and their enablement team was just fascinating. So they had like enablement calendars. They had insider coaches on the SDR side, AE side too, that would lead sessions. They had someone just for onboarding enablement. Yeah. They had a cohort that guided you all the way to 90 days. And then they went from like 90 days to like 12 months. And then they had a whole entire promotion path. It was beautiful. So the thing is, like, I've seen that, and like they had just enablement to a T. I was like, I'm here, but like, I guess I really don't need to be here. Like, I guess I'm just saying your team, like, because they just did such a great job, right? Like Fantastic. From the onboarding to the middle of it, to getting promoted, to like, here's our values, here's our statutes. And this is kind of like 2B. Most people don't think about what are the values of our team. Most people are just like, okay, what do we need to do to hit our number, 15 dials a day, et cetera? Okay, what? Nobody cares. What really matters is like, what are your values? So if you look at every single successful, and this is where people go wrong, sports teams, because I think sports analogies are mostly bad in sales, but here's a good example. Like, values on sports teams is incredibly important, right? You look at I don't like them. That's why I'm hesitating in saying them. The New England Patriots, I don't, because they beat the Falcons, and like, we always get roasted, and like, I don't like them at all. I really don't. But they have a good values-based team. The Spurs, right? Another good team based on values. So you think about these, the All Blacks, they have really good values, right? So these teams because their values. The Celtics, I would also include them as well. Their teams have really good values that have stood the test of time. It doesn't matter who the GM is or the coach. Like, these are the values of the team. You put on this jersey, and you have to incorporate these values. So, Clemson has done that as well. The football team, the Georgia has started to do that now, right? Alabama, right? So I don't like them either. But the thing is, like, these are things that like you have to pay attention to in order to have a successful team. If your team does not have good values, you will lose, right? So you want to be able to incorporate those good values. So I want to add that as well. And then number 3 is that they understand how to use the tech. So I was talking to a team the other day, and they're like, our team doesn't know how to do X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, you're going to get smoked, right? Because they're going to take like 5-6 hours to do a task, where the team that knows how to use the tool can do that in 5 minutes. Yeah. So you want to be able to have a really good, just, I guess, enablement, but really good technology training on how to use these tools so you can be more efficient.
You hit on something in there about coaches. And I love when organizations embed coaches, because pro athletes is the perfect example. So back to your point of sports and business isn't always perfect, but in this case, the best athletes have their coach for their team, but they often have their own separate coach for their own personal development. And I think there's always room for growth. There's always room for improvement. There's always room for change. And having a coach helps pull out your greatness. And I think that's just so smart. I know you have a number of coaches and mentors that you've worked with that have been really paramount to your success. Can you talk about that and why that's helped you?
Yeah. So this is something really important. I think this might hit home for people. And also as well, Lizzie, I don't know if this is you as well. Like I really used to not like getting feedback. I didn't like it at all. And I actually had to come to the realization, this was really hard for me to say right now, is that it had to do, we talked about ego, it had to do with my ego, because I have done just a lot of reading. I've done a lot of research, and I'm really look to focus on my craft. So asking for help or feedback is incredibly difficult for me, because growing up, I always was just told, like, go figure it out.
Yeah.
And that's really helpful because I can figure out a lot of things, but then it's not, because you don't want to ask for help. So when I would ask for help from people and they'd be like, that's wrong, it would definitely attack and bruise my ego. So I was like, all right, screw these people. I'm going to go figure it out myself.
Anymore.
Yeah. But that's a terrible strategy, because at the end of the day, like, you could be spending 5 months to figure it out when you could have done it in a 30-minute call. So I'm saying all this is I've really taken the time to meet with mentors and coaches, and they could tell you that, like, there are conversations where I get really annoyed or I get angry. I'm just like, that's not right. But I always listen, and then I take a step back. You know what? They were right. And I always take action. I will say that about myself. My mentors will say the same thing. I can disagree in the moment because I can be emotional about it, but after, I can logically be like, you know what, they were right. Here's what I need to do moving forward. So having mentors and coaches is important. What I will say that most people do miss is that you need to have mentors and coaches for certain aspects of your life. And if you could get the whole package, that's amazing. But sometimes people don't really touch on certain things. Like, there's certain mentors, I would not ask them about certain things, because, like, they just wouldn't know, or I just wouldn't like their advice. Like, it's not aligned with where I want to go. Right. Yeah. So it's important to find those people, physical, but also virtual mentors. I'll say I definitely have a lot more virtual mentors. And what I mean by that is people that I'm not talking to. Right. A good example right now is someone I absolutely love is like Patrick Bet David. So he has a channel called Valuetainment, and it's around, like, being an entrepreneur. So I have started companies in the past, but not to the level that I'm doing it right now. So I'm like, I need help. So I watch him, like, every morning, and, like, it really is putting good things in perspective for me. I'm learning a ton, and couldn't ask for a better person for a virtual mentor. What I've also been doing more of as well is, you don't always have to have a mentor, and sometimes you don't always have to have a coach. You could have people who are just advocate and want to help. So this has been really hard for me in the past, but I've been more open to it now, is people, when they say, like, hey, let me know how I can help, I'm taking them on that help.
Yeah.
No, I'll be like, yeah, I'm good. And, like, I actually need some help. I'm like, you know what? Like, you actually can help me. Here's how you can help. Now, the reason most people don't do that is due to, it's coming back again, is due to, like, ego, and also as well, like, you owing someone. Right. Because if you help me now, I might owe you, like, in 2-3 years, and I might be like, but I'm like, you know what? Like, that's just a part of having a network. That's just a part of, like, paying it forward. So I shouldn't really worry about that. I should worry about, like, if I actually do have something that someone can help me with, I'm more than happy to ask for that help. So I've been doing that for the past 2 months, and I could say I've been finding my gaps. I've been able to identify a real business model. I've been able to identify who I need to talk to way faster, because I'm literally just like, I need help. And it's a small phrase, yet it's very impactful once you're truly open to it. And I would say my mentors and coaches have really helped identify gaps, so I'm not the one, falling on my face like maybe they have in the past.
Well, I love that you said that. And I'm of that mindset too, that when someone says, hey, this was a really fabulous conversation, I got a lot out of it, how can I help you? I'll be like, actually, I'd love it if you'd engage more with my posts, or I'd love it if you'd share my podcast, or, give them something that they can do. And so often they don't understand that that's something that's really helpful to you. So that's an easy one. And I'm never going to ask them to do something horrible. Like, I'd like you to go get 100 friends to go and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I would never ask that. But I do think giving a specific answer is really helpful, and it's going to help you in the long run. But I also think that LinkedIn especially is such a community of people who want to help. They want to see people succeed. And yes, there is the ego and there is the competition aspect of things. But, I have people on this podcast that do something really similar to what I do. I'm the only game in town, but I can learn from them. And, supporting each other, I think is really incredible. So I would love it if you would share what you're working on now. I know you're an entrepreneur, but tell the folks what it is you're working on.
It's interesting. When you're working on something, you always think you have the greatest idea of all time, and then you continuously get punched in the face across the board. So I believe that is entrepreneurship. You get punched a couple times. And it also has been more interesting because of the recession, right?
Yes.
So I will tell you all what I'm working on, but here's a story that I think might resonate with some people, and if you face it, and maybe something you're going through right now. So I had this grand idea in like November. And it was around like video series, to keep it super short, for marketers. And I was selling it to people, and people were like, yeah, like we want to do this. We want to get the video, YouTube, etc. Right. So, middle of January hits, recession. And people are like, yeah, we don't want to do that anymore. And I'm like, wait, so like, this is my pipeline, right? So like I had my whole year forecast, I had the plan. I was like, all right, cool. We're going to make these investments. Nope. And I was like, that was a tough week. I was like, I don't know about this. And I had to make a quick pivot, right? So it's like, how do you pivot off that? Like, this is what I wrote out all this stuff. Like, I thought this was it. Right. So I remember that weekend of being like, what the heck am I going to do? And so I just like went back to notes, had a couple conversations with myself. And then I remember talking to a couple people on Monday. And then I remember at the end of Monday, I was like, I think I have an idea. Right. So I remember coming up with the idea, and I'm going to tell y'all, it's not me saying, oh, I have this idea and then never tell you. I'm going to tell y'all. So just, just hang tight. So I remember Tuesday morning, I wrote out everything, and I was like, all right, let me just like run it by somebody. So it was like my first time saying it ever. Right. And then they were like, hey, tweak this, tweak that. And it was like an hour later, I had like a sales call. And so I was like, I'm just gonna throw it out here. Let's see what happens. Right. So this is my first time doing it. Right. And did it. And they were like, that's really intriguing. That's actually like, that might be a need for us. And I'm like, okay, this is interesting. Right. And then I started having more and more conversations, and people are like, no, that this is actually like, this is where things are going. So I'm like, okay, so I'm going to tell you all this, and then we're going to talk about the story, and then we're going to talk about like what actually I'm doing now. What I've realized is that asking for feedback is critical when you may make a quick pivot, and finding people who can just assess what you're doing. Because in your head, you're going to think it's the greatest thing of all time. Sure. And you need to say it out loud for someone to be like, that's actually not the greatest thing ever. And you have to be okay with that. Be like, yo, that actually, like, you should think about it differently. Yeah. And I could say, like, by me doing that, I could be like way over here. I think I'm in a very good position now, because like I go to people and I say, hey, like, I know you know this space, you know this field. I'm not selling you anything. I just need to make sure I'm on the right direction. Right. I'm not even trying to sell. I'm really just trying to understand. Right. Get the perspective. So now what I'm doing is I'm essentially taking influencer marketing to a different level. And so when most people think about influencer marketing, they just think of, oh yeah, some content creator, LinkedIn top voice. Let's go get them. Let's go to the post. Right. I believe there is a select amount of B2B influencers. And at some point, those resources will be completely tapped unless more and more creators happen. I'm not saying don't go get influencers or creators. I'm saying that you have to be mindful about it. Right. If you think about marketing, it's also about revenue. In order to get the marketing revenue, you have to make sure you're increasing your brand awareness. You have to make sure that you're increasing your social lift. And then you also ultimately have to make sure that you're increasing your community expansion. In order to do that, you do that through content. However, in order to get the content going and putting people from the audience into the community and creating advocates, you have to have multiple influencers, right? So there are three main influencers in B2B. The creator, which we all are very familiar with, and two that we don't talk about often, which is the employee, which is typically probably the executive, and then the customer, who also could be the influencer. So I want you all to think about this, because somebody like the customer, like, what are you talking about? B2C influencers has been around for a while, and they are the customer. Think about it, right? They're probably like wearing the shoe, they're doing the socks, they probably have the shirt. So they are a customer. So why not in B2B? Why are we not tapping on our customers to be the influencers? And the beat, I mean, maybe some of y'all do these videos and I'm not trying to attack you, but like, let's just be frank here. The customer testimony videos are boring. It's the same music. It's the same background and it's the same intro. Hi, my name is Bob and I'm from X and X, and we helped solve this problem. It's the same thing, same music, same, like, it's the same thing. Nobody cares, right? So my thought process is, let's amplify the executives. Let's amplify the customers. Let's create short form content with them. Let's interview them for an hour and like, let's make sure they get content out of it. And then we could get a ton of content and actually give it to the sales team, enable them to post as well, and then amplify. So essentially, like, my whole thing that I'm focusing on is amplifying marketing efforts to tie it around your brand narrative so that you can start conversations in the marketplace that could generate into revenue.
Yeah, you're modernizing a testimonial.
That's all you're doing.
And you're right. The client is your best source of business. If they're happy and they love a product or a service, having them talk about it in their own words versus the canned music and script.
Oh my,
it does make a really big difference. I think that's so cool. And I think that's going to be amazing.
Thank you. And the thing is, I believe that it's where the new go-to-market is going. Again, this is only a hypothesis. I have to prove it out, and then I'll have more confidence as I get results. But I believe it to be true. Like, I've been training on top of the funnel outbound. Like, this is what I do. So it's starting to slowly not get the same results they used to. I'm talking to people and they're saying they just completely ripped out their paid ad spend. Traditional marketing isn't working as much. People are doing less webinars, right? So that only leads to me that you have to do people-led content with your own people and equipping them on how to amplify their message. And also as well, when you really think about it, organic content is going to be the winner. And then I don't know about you, but I've been seeing a lot of products lately. They look pretty much the same. So if you don't have a good brand narrative, why would I choose your product when everything looks the same? So that's my mission right now. And that was the pivot that I made.
I love it. I love it. And I wish you the best of luck with that. I think you're going to crush it like you do all things. Okay. So we're going to pivot a little bit. Tell us what inspires you.
So I was in Miami, and this is not an answer you're going to expect because I just said Miami. So you're expecting like live, lit, boat, crazy, it's party. No, that's actually not what's about to happen. So I was in Miami. I was there for Art Basel. It was last year. And I was at one of the conferences or one of the art exhibits. And I went by myself. Like, I just wanted to go and experience it. I like going to things by myself. And I always recommend it for people if you want to do that. And so I remember, I don't know, this guy and we just started talking. I don't even know how the conversation started. And he was like, when you think about your motivation or what inspires you, do you think about your great grandkids? And I was like, no, like, I'm barely thinking about, I don't even have kids. So like, why would I be thinking about great grandkids? I'm not even married. Like, what are you talking about? And he's like, well, think about it. He's like, everything that we do, typically in the forefront, why we want to be successful is for us, right? I want to make money so I can go get a nice house, a car, a watch, where vacations, all the stuff that people originally get into sales for, right? I want to make a lot of money for me. I don't really care about anybody else. Okay, cool. Then, like, once you have a family, I don't have a family, but this is what other people told me. Then you're like, okay, cool. I'm doing it for my kids, right? And then some people even say they get, and you could probably speak to, they get more motivated once they get kids, right? Okay, cool. And then people, when they get older, right, they're great grandkids. They're like, wow, this is the legacy I've built. But he was like, what if you just jump all those steps and you start thinking about your great grandkids now, like earlier in your career? And so what inspires me is that it's really to just put other people on. And I know that might sound like not real and genuine, but like, I genuinely do it for the fact of I can really change the direction, the narrative of my family and the futures moving forward. And I don't know why you wouldn't work hard to do that, because then no one else would have to go through what you have gone through. And if you give them the right values, which I've studied the richest families in the world, the reason that they are able to keep wealth is due to what we said earlier, their values, their statutes, and the guidelines and the regulations that they've given to their families, so that so one of them doesn't lose all the money, right? So ultimately, at the end of the day, right, you have to have that. And so that motivates me, is what type of legacy am I leaving? And I'm not saying that if I die, then there needs to be a parade for months and months because, look, like the Queen of England has died and no one's really talking about that. So that's not what I'm saying. I'm talking about the legacy within my own family and the people that were close to me. How did I make them feel and how did I impact their life moving forward? That's what inspires me. And I think ultimately now this is even more recent. What's inspiring me is an ethos of excellence. And rest in peace to Kobe Bryant. He was one of my favorite people to watch, and even after his career was a fascinating person to learn from. He just talks about an ethos of excellence. Mm-hmm. And I just feel like as long as you're here and you're focused on whatever you're focused on, why would I not try to figure out how do I get 100% of my potential? Why would I not figure out how to evolve to the highest peak of who I could be? I just don't know why I wouldn't try to do that. So that's why I've changed a lot of habits recently, like working out, the way that I eat, the way that I communicate. I realized that I wasn't living up to my full potential the way that I needed to. And so I just said, I need to continuously evolve and I need to go do more. And again, I'm not putting that on other people. Like you need to go work 24 hours a day. I'm not even saying that. I'm just saying evolving more as a human, which I believe we all should be doing. If you're here and you're even listening in, it's already a blessing. So why not try to figure out how do I get to the height of me?
Well, it's living with
intention. I'm saying if I never get there, then like I never get there, but at least it's the journey.
Yeah, it's living with intention. And we talk about that a lot on the show. I think you're being very selective and very purposeful with the choices you're making. And that's great. And you did a perfect lead in to the next question, which is what's the legacy you'd like to leave?
So I have a good friend. His name's Brian Wish. He's got a company called Arcbound. You should go check it out. He's really good people. He's building some really cool stuff over there. And he's very deep. Like, and he's very emotional, and not a bad way. I don't want you to be like, he's like emotional, like he's crying every time. He's just very emotional. I'm very logical. So I'm like, we need to do this. This is how you need to do it. Like, I don't care. Right. That's just how I am. Right. So we're very opposite, but we're able to mesh both of those to like have really good, thoughtful conversations. Right. And so he was like, hey, here's some questions that like, I think that will help you along your journey. One of those was around legacy. So I think ultimately for me, if I think about legacy and I think about everything, is that like, it just comes down to me was more focused on the impact than he was on the income. And it's, can be challenging because obviously, I'm not out here working for free, right? like so like don't get it twisted. However, I want people to say like he was way more focused on the impact than he was on the income. And I impacted people in ways and had conversations that ultimately helped them. Now, along the way, sure, there's some things I messed up along the way. Like I'm not saying I would take it back, but like, it could have been, I could approach it differently. However, I'm really focused on how can I impact people to the highest degree in the conversations, in the content, and in the little things that I do. And if I can leave a legacy around I impacted people on a personal and professional level, I think I would have done what I was called here to do.
I think you're on your way, my friend. So congratulations on that. And whether you think you're doing it or not, I mean, being a top LinkedIn voice, you've been at it for a few years now. So bravo to you.
I know. Elder statesman over here. I'm like, should I leave LinkedIn for a while?
So Morgan, I have like 100 more questions, but we have to stop. So tell people, how can they find you?
Yeah, so the best way to find me is on LinkedIn, Morgan J. Ingram. And Morgan J. Ingram is the same across all platforms as well. And just started getting into long format on YouTube. So definitely go check that out and hopefully to connect with y'all at some point.
It has been a pleasure. Thank you for sharing all of your stories and all of your perspective. It's really fantastic. Folks, I hope you enjoyed this episode and I look forward to bringing you more for this episode of Heartbeat for Hire. Take care and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Heartbeat for Hire. If you like what you hear, I'd love it if you'd subscribe and leave a 5-star review. To keep the conversation going, you can find me on Insta or at LinkedIn at Lyndsay Dowd, H4H. Or you can reach me at my website, heartbeatforhire.com. Thanks so much. Have a great day.